Okay, it seems like I'm in a pretty good spot here. This is the section of track I want to work on. Okay, this is the section of track I want to work on. So what do I have here? Well, I didn't do good documentation prior, but it's stacks of corrugated cardboard with paper mache on a bedding that I made myself, and this is several times used Z scale, tiny scale track. So now I'm going to take this stuff, DOS wood, and I'm going to wet my surface with a paintbrush. Wet my track. Then I'm just going to start really just shoving it in. So, okay, this is the way I do ballast. I really don't want to start sprinkling all kinds of dirt into my Z-scale track to make ballast. It's just going to mess up my engines. Just going to mess up my engines. So I'm just shoving this stuff in. It's a self-hardening clay. There's a couple of brands, and I have no endorsements. Maybe someday. That would be nice. And so this is 3 times recycled track. I've used this track over and over again with permanent installations like this. See, I'm not really caring at the moment. Just shoving it in. And so, yeah, I've used the same track many times. If you're just starting from scratch, you've got a great advantage in that all your track is really clean. Mine is extremely dirty. So I just shove it in there. So I've got nothing to lose, right? I've made 3 layouts with this same track, permanent layouts with the same track. I rip it up with a knife when I want to do it again. And so I got this little picky stick here. And really, the only thing that's really important is that the inside of the track is ultra clean. And I have this information from an actual physical railroader. I spent a night hanging out with some true railroad guys working on a funicular in Lisbon, and they pointed out quite clearly that it's the inside that matters. The outside doesn't matter. You can't have things sticking up to interfere with your rolling stock. But indeed, if I just level this out like this with my mud here, with my DOS clay, this will work just fine. For example, for a road crossing. But you don't want that. You want to be able to see your rails. And so I take this little modeling thingy here, and I just start cutting it away. And cleaning it up. Cutting it away, cleaning it up, pushing it down. And I use my fingers, because my fingers are pretty okay. And then I also wet it up some more. So just a little brush with water. And I am indeed, sort of pushing my excess into the inside. Watering it up. And, let's make my life easy and just make sure I'm scraping away excess. Do it again with this guy. And do it again. And then just sort of push it back like this. There's a little tweaky stick. Just a pointy stick from a soldering kit. And you see that I'm actually creating the illusion of ballast. And yeah, it takes time. But this hobby, this profession, the profession of model railroading, takes time. And that's part of the joy of it, in that you just need to work around your track one little section at a time. Start picking in here. I hope my camera is well aligned. Probably not, but maybe it is. Just pulling it away from the rails. And I like this better than spreading ballast. I like this much better than spreading ballast because I know I'm not getting any nasty, sand into my tracks. The idea of getting sand into my tracks is just infuriating. Clean it out some more and push it back. The last thing I want to do is get dirt into my engines. And the nice thing about this stuff is once you got it all sanded down and maybe seal it up a little bit with something, it's not going to make dust on your track. So I'm creating the effect of ballast with a little tweaky stick, one little section at a time. And I know, if you're a beginner, you just want to get your stock rolling. Okay, so make a simple track. I've seen my tracks run, many tracks run. So I'm not in a rush to see my stock rolling around, right? Because I've seen it and I've had that joy. If you want to have that joy, you want to see your stock running around, you want to see your locos doing what they're supposed to do, make an initial track that's simple. But I've had that joy, and indeed with this layout, I've had it run in both directions, flopped my polarity on my transformer, and I've seen my track run in its primitive form, and now I'm actually working on the details. Now that I've actually already had that joy, and I know 3 times used track, there is going to be problems here and there. And the nice thing about paper mache is that it's a $0 investment. It's just wheat flour and some newspaper and some cardboard. So if you have to start digging into it and cutting it up, no big deal. No great loss. Just do it again. So if you're new to this hobby, you have to keep in mind, this is a hobby of patience. You can't be in a rush. I know you want to see your stock rolling around. Okay, so you want to see your stock rolling around. Make a simple layout to start with. An oval with 1 or 2 turnouts maybe. and then leave, and then have your mind open to think about how to expand it from there, from your initial layout. Now, this is a crazy layout, all made from recycled track. And, there's no track plan here. I didn't use any software. I just took all my track that I had from my previous layout, ripped it all up from my previous layout, and then just let me see what I can put together with what I have. And so there's lots of cuts. That's why a Dremel tool is nice. Here, maybe it's still in the camera frame. Here's a major cut. And this is how I actually solder the connection between the cut. Because here's a cut, and I had to cut it because it was just trash. So I'm not going to solder here, right? I'm not going to make the solder joint here, because that's just going to melt the ties and make a big mess of this joint. I go outside of it. I use a little piece of non-enameled wire that you can get at the craft store, and I solder around that to complete the connection. Another little tip. So let me just keep on poking at this to make my ersatz ballast. Okay, so once this is dry, what I'm going to do, once it's dry, about a day, patience. I'm going to take this big wonkin brush, right? You would never think that you would use a big wonkin brush like this on a Z-scale track, but I can already do it. Just push it around and clean up the trash, of course. And then go back with your picky stick and push it down. And that's what it is. That's what it truly is. You take time and patience, and you work on all the little details, one little bit at a time. It can be a frustrating hobby. Oh, yes, it can be. You can be very frustrated with your work. You don't like the way it looks. You don't like the way it performs. But this is engineering. To me, it's not really a hobby. It's actually engineering on a micro scale. It's massive engineering on a micro scale. Okay, so once I get my brown stuffed in there, that's the Das wood. Then I grab this white stuff, a little bit more dimensionally stable, and I work down from there. Now we roll it up. And, you want to water up. Give it a little bit of wetness. So it has something it knows how to adhere to. And now I'm just going to start shoving this in. The white stuff. With this layout, I'm not sure if I want to go with a winter theme. I'm thinking I want to go. I'm in Norway right now. Yeah, so I just started living in Norway, and it's cold here, and that's one of the reasons why I sort of reinvigorated my model railroad career. And I'm thinking I want to do a spring layout. So there's going to be snow. There's going to be rocks. Norway is extremely mountainous. And so that's why I decided to go with this kind of approach. So I got my brown stuff. I got some brown stuff, and now I'm putting in some white stuff. And this is going to really stabilize the papier-mâché. So, yeah, I just, as you saw, I just sort of fingered it in. And then I take a wet brush and I smush it all together. Try to blend the brown stuff which is a different weight. So sometimes you get, well, a seam. You can deal with that later. But the idea is that I'm really trying to make a really solid roadway on top of this papier mache. I want something that is more dimensionally stable and that reacts better to changes in temperature. So I'm just sort of mushing it all together. I think I really should get a sample track. I'm actually going to go on a 3-hour voyage to the closest train store. I'm in Kristiansand, Norway. There's no train store here. I could go all the way to Oslo. That's a 4-hour trip. But there actually seems to be a really nice store uh, just up the coast, 3 hours by bus. And I think I'm going to go there because I don't, you can order your stuff online, but I really like to touch it. I want to touch everything uh, before I buy it. I don't, this is not an internet hobby. Yes, you can get all your stuff on the internet, but go to a train fare. If yeah, you can pay a bajillion dollars for brand new Marklin engines, but you can also go to a festival or some train exhibition, and there'll be guys there who are selling their bits and pieces. Or you go fiend.no if you're in Norway, or eBay, the usual. But it's so much nicer to actually touch the stuff before you buy it. So I'm actually going to go on a 3-hour bus ride um, to a village, to a smaller city than Kristiansand that has actually a train store, and it also has not very distant from it is the biggest model railroad in Norway. So I'll probably, and that's why the store is there, right? So I'll probably go visit the model railway, and also, I'm going to buy some stuff. I don't know what I'm going to buy. Maybe a new engine, maybe some rolling stock. I need some track because I'm out of track, and so if I have to, something goes wrong here, and I have to replace a section of track, I've got nothing to replace it with. So I might buy a bunch of track, and I'm also thinking of just getting not necessarily a start, maybe a starter kit with some add-ons, and then actually go through this process the way I do it, uh, from really from beginning to end, and make some videos for you guys. Uh, you know, Many of us we've been in on the news groups. We've been model railroading since we were kids. I'm almost 60 years old, so I got 40 years into this hobby. Uh, More than that, 50 years. So I've been doing this for 50 years. Holy cow! Uh, and but I've always done it. I spend my money on track and rolling stock, but not on scenery and not on infrastructure. Maybe that's my mistake. You do what you do. It's your railroad road. Keep in mind that you have nobody to please but your own self. And so do it the way you want to do it. And I like to do it this way. Obviously, very time consuming. Uh, but it doesn't cost. The materials that I'm using at this point, the materials that I'm using cost me nothing. Okay, the track's expensive, but that's why it's 3 times recycled, because I've made 3 layouts with this same track. And my rolling stock is good, and my locomotives are all good. And so, if there's anything I could say, is just you make your railroad, and not don't you don't need to pay attention to how other people are doing it. Steal from them, steal from the greats. Oh, that's an interesting technique. Oh, but it involves pouring resin. Do you really want to pour resin? I don't want to pour resin. I want to make everything actually, child safe. I only want to use child safe materials because I'm just a child. And I don't want to pollute myself with nasty resins. So I'm using really gentle materials. And okay, and the downside of using gentle materials is, well, they may, buckle a little bit. You may have to adjust your track several times to get your trains running smoothly in both directions. Uh, but once you got it not nailed down, you didn't spend a fortune on resins, and you've got a really reliable track. And you can, even if you have children, they can they can play along too. Okay, I wouldn't recommend letting your 5-year old kid do your ballasting, but they can certainly make a mountain out of paper mache. That's not a problem. Just clean this up a little bit, and you see several minutes. 20 minutes on one small section of track. And you spend the time to make it nice, and it's going to be worth it in the end. So once this is dry, I'm going to scrub it. It's just really solid rock dry. I'm going to scrub it with this mother, which is going to just clean out all the stuff in between and make a really nice surface to then continue with my decorations. Hope you enjoyed this. Kind of a long video, but I hope you enjoyed it.